I love it when things work. Welcome, everybody. We're glad you're here. I'm Vinny, Director of Fortify Groups, and my special guest is Raisha Ismail, who some of you saw her back in February when we made our first attempt at this webinar and we had some technical problems, and I've had lots of emails asking, please get Raisha back. And here you are. We're so glad to have you back about what amounts to about 4 months later, Raisha. And sadly, between then and now, you have passed through one of the real tragedies of life. And most of you know, Raisha, most of you in the Fortify family know that Raisha lost her brother in the mosque massacre in Christchurch, New Zealand. And we have been in touch a lot, had a lot of communication between one another. I'm so proud of you for how you have handled this tragedy and how you have been a support to your family. And you're amazing. And what I've really seen is, Raisha, you've used your recovery tools. You're amazing. Welcome to our webinar tonight.
Thank you. It's really great to be here.
We've known each other a long time. I think, I could be wrong, I think we're closing in on 6 years. And I've known you first as a client, and then I've known you as the director of our spouses group. And I watched you grow in your we've shared clinical notes, we've shared clinical theory and modality, and it has been an exciting opportunity to watch you grow in your practice. You're part of the Fortify family. You're a Fortify coach, a Fortify group leader. And I think, as most members remember, last February, you were one of the keynote speakers here in Salt Lake City, our headquarters, at the Utah Coalition Against Pornography. And those of you, really, you knocked it out of the park. It's just one of the best presentations I've ever seen.
Thank you.
And how you interacted with the audience, that's a whole nother story. You were phenomenal. But if you want to catch that, just by the way, you can go to Utah Coalition Against Pornography, and forgive me for not knowing exactly, but it's past presentations or this year's presentations, and you can watch Raisha's presentation to us this year on replay there. And obviously, you'll be able to watch tonight's on replay as well. We welcome you, those of you that are live. We also welcome those of you that are watching on the replay. Raisha, how are you? Really, how are you doing?
It depends which day you're asking. Today's a pretty good day. Yeah. And I think I will say that in response to what's happened here in Christchurch is I like to refer to it as the gift of recovery. And I truly believe my previous experience throughout my relationship, all the tools, and it also ties into my UCAT presentation around dealing with adversity and when self-care is essential for mental health. And all the things I shared in that workshop are many of the tools that have been relevant and helped me through this pretty challenging time for our family. But yeah, I'm really happy to be here, and it's great to be able to be with the folks at Fortify again to give this another go. And I hope it'll be a great experience for everyone that's joining us today and for those that look at it later on as well.
Raisha, about 20 years ago, almost 25 years ago, I was in one of my first addiction recovery group meetings, and in the room, it may have been the first night, but when I walked into the room, about 15, 20 of us, and it was a 12-step group, but it was led by a clinician. On the ceiling was a mobile, and that mobile was made out of what I thought probably were wire coat hangers, about shaped sort of in a semicircle, and at the end they'd made little hooks. On that mobile was, on one end was the label Dad, and on the other label was the addict. Then there was Mom on a wire, and on the other end was the label that labeled her, 2 daughters, a son, and there were these labels. And anyway, and there it was, balanced in the addiction, in the unhealthy way there was this balance. And I remember the clinician said, okay, so dad goes to rehab. He gets into recovery and he comes back 30, 60 days later, walks into the home, and they put a new little label. They took the old one off, put a new one on, and because it was a little heavier, it kind of wobbled and it made the whole mobile wobble. And he made a comment I've never forgotten, which basically was, you can go and get help for yourself. But he said, sadly, the unwanted behaviors that sort of caused this entire family or this mobile to be dysfunctional, they need to find help for their dysfunctions as well, which isn't to say they're addicts, but they're affected, they're impacted. And that reminded me of something you said a few weeks ago to me, the partner recovery, the spouse recovery, the relationship recovery, sort of a his, mine, ours. Made sense. Does that fit tonight?
Absolutely. It's just been beautifully for what we're focusing on for our webinar. So it's a common way we refer to during my spouse group as well, and we talk a lot about the importance of partner recovery, spouse recovery, and only then will the relationship be able to function. And our focus for our webinar today is around looking at emotional attachment for both partner and spouse in a healthy way to build effective communication. And eventually, if both partner and spouse work recovery well, the beauty that can come out of it, and particularly around healthy communication and genuine true intimacy. And some have even said to the point where it's much deeper than they could ever have imagined. So it sets the scene beautifully. So moving into what we're doing for our webinar today, what we're looking at is building effective, healthy communication. And so to explore this concept, I want to look at 3 potential scenarios. And so for the sake of the webinar, Vinny, you're going to play the partner or the person struggling with unwanted sexual behaviours. Yeah. And I'm going to play the spouse, which could be girlfriend or whatever that may be, and the experience that they have. And then we're going to look at 2 ways of looking at it. What happens when recovery is not functioning well and when it's not so healthy? And then we're going to replay each scenario and look at what it means when healthy communication and attachment and good emotional work is going on for both parties, what that looks like. So let's do this, shall we?
Right.
You ready to go?
Right. As we do these scenarios, from time to time, we'll have somebody that maybe wants to ask a question or 2 or 3. Could we, as we do a scenario, I don't want to call it an intermission, but can we take a little break? We'll see if there's a question. If not, we'll just move on. Would you feel comfortable answering a question or 2 that come up?
That sounds perfect. Okay. A nice way to transition
from
each scenario. All right, so let's start with the first one. Now, this is a real scenario that occurred in a conversation during one of my spouse group sessions. And what was going on was the spouse was experiencing a bit of trauma, and they were feeling emotional and unsettled. And that was because it was the disclosure day anniversary of when they had found out about the unwanted sexual behaviours of their partner. So what was happening was the partner was in the bathroom and they were taking a long time enjoying their shower. They did have their device in the bathroom with them. And so the partner is, taking a bit longer than they, usually may, but the spouse gets upset and quite unsettled. So that's the first scenario. We're going to reenact it. Vinny, why are you taking so long in the bathroom?
Oh my gosh, there she goes again. Sorry, I'll be out shortly. No big deal.
I'm just not feeling good today, and he's taking ages. What's he up to? Gosh, I hate this thing, and it's disclosure day for anniversary, and I'm not feeling good, and he's doing this.
Why does she do this all the freaking time? I'm so sick of it. Just a few more minutes.
Hurry up. Why are you taking so long?
I just had a long day, and I'm sweating a lot, and the hot water's not working the way it was. Just taking a little extra time. Sorry.
I'm really struggling today, and I don't like this at all. It just causes me more issues.
Does she?
I'm not happy.
This does to me. This drives me crazy. Oh.
So let's just imagine that Vinny's come out of the bathroom, and spouse is about to talk to partner. Vinny, why were you taking so long in the bathroom? What was going on? What are you up to?
What do you think was going on? Why do you even ask such a question? Just taking my shower, so it took a little bit extra time.
You know why. You brought this issue into the relationship. And why did you take your device into the bathroom? For goodness sake.
I was watching the news. You always think I'm looking at something, and I'm not. Back off.
And we'll intervene and stop there. So that can be a common scenario when spouse is struggling, partner is not doing so well, and then it ends up being a disagreement or an argument that doesn't really end up being healthy or allows for good emotional attachment or communication. So let's replay and see what happens if both partner and spouse are working recovery and it works better. So what we'll do is this time, just to speed it up, Vinny, is we'll go from when you have just come out of the bathroom and we'll reenact what the conversation may look like. Okay. Vinny, how come you took so long in the bathroom?
Honey, I'm sorry. I made the mistake. I brought my phone in and I was watching the nightly news because I wasn't going to be able to watch it on TV. So I watched it on my phone. I know how that makes you feel. Please forgive me. I am so sorry.
But you know how that unsettles me. Why did you do that?
I do. I know. I think I was being selfish again, and I wasn't aware. I wasn't thinking about how this might affect you. All I can say is I'm gonna work on that. I'm really sorry.
Well, you do realise it's disclosure day tomorrow. Yesterday was when you told me all about your disclosure, and I'm really struggling with that at the moment. And it's been really hard for me this week.
I'm so sorry. Do you want to sit down? Do you want to talk? I'm happy to listen. All I can say is I'm sorry, and I want to know how I can help.
Yeah, I think we do need to sit down and talk about this. Can we get on the couch and just have a chat about this?
Absolutely.
Okay, that'll be good. So just to finish off this particular scenario, what could end up happening while that conversation unfolds between spouse and partner is it's really important that partner is validating the feelings of the spouse, is hearing them because they're upset and unsettled, and also being really supportive, but particularly listening attentively to what does the spouse actually need while they are struggling. And so the spouse might say, actually, I just need some space right now, but I just want you to hear what I have to say. Or a spouse might say, I actually just need you to hold me because I'm feeling tearful and I need to cry about this. And so the best thing the partner can do to help build that healthy emotional attachment is ask the spouse, what do they actually need right now while they're struggling? And really feel and own what's going on for them. And this will help to really build that effective communication, but also deepen that level of intimacy. So healing and sitting with someone else's pain is a real gift when there's a struggle. And if you're doing it in this situation, it has a real opportunity to deepen recovery.
Well, that's what you need, not what I need. Oh, that's a difference. I'm so well rehearsed at thinking about my pain, what I need, how irritated I was that you would question me. I absolutely struggle. I'll say most of us, I don't know that all of us do, but getting into your shoes can go so far in bridging that gap between where we have been and where we're really trying to be, which is that word intimacy. Intimacy is what I seek, and intimacy is what I lack. And most of the reason is because I've been turning the glasses back and just looking at my needs, not thinking about your needs. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I'm just so glad that you brought that up.
So that's scenario one. We've started off relatively easy. We're going to get into a couple more that are a little bit more intense. I don't know, Vinny, if there is any questions. I think we look okay.
Yeah, no questions right now, but feel free to write them and we'll get to them. If you have a question, we'll get to them at the end of the next little scenario that we're going to do.
Awesome. So this one's a little bit more intense. And so I'm going to, again, share what's going on, and then we'll do the scenarios with the two different versions. So this time, and again, this is a real situation that's happened to one of our spouses. So spouse is online, they are on the laptop or computer, they happen to be browsing, they're perhaps feeling a little bit unsettled that particular day, so they start browsing the internet history. And they click on history and notice that there's a link to Pornhub on the site. And so for the rest of the day, they're feeling quite anxious. They've probably been searching the rest of the computer, trying to figure out what's going on for their partner, because they're obviously wondering what's happening. Trust is being affected, obviously. Betrayal triggers are coming into play, and spouse is feeling pretty unsettled. And so partner arrives home, perhaps from work or maybe wherever they've been, and spouse confronts the partner with what they've found. So that's where we're going to pick up the scenario and play both roles. All right, here we go. So partner, you've just walked in and I'm about to confront you. Vinny, I've just got online and found Pornhub today when I was browsing in the history. What have you been doing?
You found what?
I found Pornhub in the history. I cannot believe you're doing this again. How many times does this have to happen?
You're looking at the internet history. You want to establish trust with me, and there you are snooping around. How is that going to help us establish trust? Are you out of your mind?
Are you serious? You're actually going to blame me right now when it's you that's been online viewing and doing
that? Me. That was not me. I don't know who looked at that, but that is not me.
I can't believe this. Now you're going to try and blame someone else. You and I are the two people that use this computer.
Your nephew used it 2 weeks ago. It's probably your nephew. I don't look at that stuff anymore. I told you last year. I'm done.
I can't believe this. Now you're going to blame one of my family members? Seriously. So we'll stop there. You get the idea. So again, it's pretty challenging, really heated, really intense. Partner is being defensive. Spouse is getting more and more upset, unsettled, and traumatized. And generally, it doesn't go anywhere. So let's replay the scenario when it's a lot more healthy and done in a way that's well. So for this particular reenactment, I'm really going to highlight the importance of setting healthy boundaries, particularly for the spouse. So here we go. So same scenario. Vinny, I've been online today and I noticed that you've been on Pornhub. I looked at the history and I found the link there.
You searched the internet history and you found Pornhub. I don't know what to say. I can't remember. I can't remember going there, but I remember about a month ago. All I can tell you is I am working on my recovery. I remember going to a place at about 2 a.m, but sweetheart, I went there. I Googled something. I know it was wrong, but I was there like 10 seconds, maybe 20 seconds. And I said, wait a minute, I'm not going here. And I got off the site and I didn't even remember it. It was so quick. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't go to porn sites and stare at them. I don't do that anymore. It was a slip.
Well, you know what? Right now, it's really important for me to feel safe and to work on myself. So I'm going to implement one of my healthy boundaries. So I need you in the spare room tonight. I don't feel like being near you. I need space and time to process what's going on for me and what's happened. I'm probably going to go to my spouse group and talk about it with them and do some journaling so that I can work out what's happening for me.
I want you to do whatever you feel you need to do. I'm going to follow whatever you ask me to do. I promised you a year ago, I will do whatever it takes. I will do whatever you ask. I've earned the right to follow whatever you ask me to do. I want this relationship more than anything else in this world. So I understand, and all I can tell you is I'm so sorry. I'm going to probably check in when I go to my group this week. I'll talk to my group.
The best thing you can do right now is get on Fortify, talk to your coach, make sure you talk about this in your group, speak to your counselor, do whatever it takes to sort this out, because at some point, when and if I'm ready to talk about it, I need to know that you're doing the work.
I'll talk to my group leader, Les. He's a really great guy. I will. Thank you. That's what I'll do.
Okay. and stop there. So you get the idea. Again, partner taking responsibility and owning up, making sure that they're responsive to the spouse to say, I will do whatever it takes to sort this out. So you can hear honesty, you can hear ownership and accountability around this is what I'm going to work towards, but also respecting and accepting the spouse's boundary. And healthy boundaries are defined by spouses when they're willing to do the work on themselves to work out what am I willing to work with, which is really important, and define what they believe will be helpful. So I will emphasize here, spouses setting their boundaries is individual and specific to them. And so for some, having a timeout zone where a partner goes into the spare room is appropriate. For other spouses, they may have other ways that they want to set their healthy boundaries. But the key message here is for healthy communication and true intimacy to be rebuilt, particularly after an intense trigger like that. It's essential that whatever healthy boundary is set is respected and validated and supported and owned. So that's pretty much that one. I'm loving the messages around us being Hollywood stars there, Vinny. It's very cool.
We're getting encouragement to take a trip down to Hollywood. Thanks, Lucy. Yeah. Go home tonight. Michelle, I'm a star. Lucas said I was a star. Oh, I think you're talking about you, Raisha. So.
Oh, that's funny.
All right.
All right, so that brings us to the last one. And for this particular one, look at the intervening within a negative cycle. So particularly when unwanted behaviours are recurring in a relationship. Generally, relationships will develop a form of communication that is quite commonly placed, that often gets repeated, and it's usually unhelpful to the relationship. And both the spouse and partner can actually end up getting stuck. And they go round and round in the same negative cycle anytime triggers come up, anytime issues come up. And so the main focus here is particularly around emotional attachment and dependence. It's essential that spouse and partner are doing their own work. And what that requires is an intense, deep level of self-awareness. So if you can understand who you are, what's going on for you and where you're at, you can be more self-aware about identifying what it is you need to do to support yourself when these challenges come up. So again, probably a common scenario some of you may have experienced, and this is the situation where partner and spouse have gone to the local mall, and spouse notices that the partner was looking at another woman. And so spouse is feeling pretty unsettled about what they've noticed, and partner's probably aware that they may have been, caught in a sense or found out that they were looking. And so what we're going to do for this one is that's setting the scene, but we're going to start the scenario where partner and spouse have sat down in the car. So partner's driving, they're about to start the key and get moving, and then spouse intervenes. And again, we'll show the not so healthy. And actually for this one, I think our time's going well, Vinny, we may actually look at a couple of different scenarios that show the growth that can occur over time if it's done well through recovery.
Sure.
So here we go. I saw you looking at that woman in the mall, Vinny, just now. What were you doing?
You saw me looking at a woman in the mall. How many people were in the mall? Can you count 500 people? Which one did you see me looking at? All 500? My God.
I can't believe that this is your response. You brought this into our relationship, and I can't believe that we have to go to the mall, and when we're there, this stuff comes with us everywhere. I'm just so over it.
I brought this into our relationship. Looking at people when I'm walking down the hall of the mall, and I'm trying to avoid not walking into that person and that person. That's what you're telling me. Stop looking. Maybe I should close my eyes. Maybe I should just go like this. I can't look where I'm walking, people. My wife won't let me look at people. Come on. Put your cattle prod away. Wow.
You're actually being ridiculous. Look, you don't have to do what you were doing. I saw you looking, and I saw how you looked at her. Just ridiculous, honestly.
And what was I thinking? Tell me what I was thinking. Maybe you should post a sign on your door. The doctor is in, 5 cents, or palm reading for mind reading people's futures. You have no idea what I was thinking. And I'm telling you, I wasn't thinking anything bad or undressing her with my eyes. I'm just looking. I'm just walking. You got to stop that. You want to build intimacy and trust, and this is what you do.
You are now blaming me? Like this is my fault? I can't believe this.
I went to a mall. We're in the car, and all you can talk about is not what we saw or bought or any fun we had in the mall. You saw me looking at a woman, and you go crazy.
I'm going to stop there before we end up with a massive volcano of explosion. But you get the idea. And when a negative cycle is occurring, it basically just keeps winding up into disagreement and argument. And it can become pretty unsettling. And by the end of it, we'll just say that partner and spouse have been driving home along this journey. It'll probably be even more angry and intense and explosive than what we role modeled here today and showed. But basically, by the end of it, it could end in a couple of ways. One, where they both just yell and yell and yell, and then they just shut down. And other times it could be that one or the other shuts down completely. They'll stop speaking. That can be a response from a spouse. They may just shut down completely and just not want to speak. So they lose their ability to even voice after a while because they're feeling vulnerable and unsettled. So negative cycles are pretty challenging. What can be done is, again, it comes back to the self-awareness. And so both spouse and partner, if they're working on themselves, they're able to really acknowledge and understand what's going on for them. And that way, there's an opportunity for one or the other, and this also helps the relationship, to catch themselves before it gets to a point where it goes to that stage. And so before we do that, I just want to introduce a couple of terms that some of you may be familiar with from the Candeo days around responder and director. So the scenario we just shared now is, imagine at this point, because both parties are feeling vulnerable and unsettled, we get the brain not functioning as well as it could be. So a bit flooded, not able to think logically. And so here's responder and then responder, and they're both just clashing. And so when responder and responder are communicating, it's very difficult to get anywhere, especially when you're in the midst of it and you're just grappling. Your brain isn't in a space or capacity to function well enough to even intervene when you get to that stage. Whereas if you're in the director, I think, and happens to be this scenario is in the car, but if you're directing the car or driving in the driver's seat and you're directing it, you're more in control. So Vinny, I know you can explain it in terms of what's happening to the brain so people understand that. Well,
one thing I was going to say is when I look back at my own experience, I have my little object lessons. Well, I say I've been walking around my whole life in pain. And what do I do for pain? Well, some of us run to drugs, some run to alcohol, some run to porn. I ran to porn, I ran to drugs. It's interesting, though, on a little bit smaller scale, but just as powerful, is the dialogue you and I just had. You accused me of looking, and my first reaction is really a fight or flight. I'm shamed, I'm being accused. I want to prove that I'm right. That's a tool that I use. You tell me I did something, and I don't stop to look at it objectively. I instantly use that instant resource that will make me feel better. What will that be as I perceive it? Proving that I'm right, proving that you're wrong. If you're wrong, then I'm right. And if I'm the victim, I'm not responsible. Those are tools that we use to get ourselves out of this short-term pain. Ironically, maybe it does make me feel better for 1 second, but my relationship is falling apart by constantly defending. And I'm hoping what we'll model is getting out of that rut. It goes nowhere but south. It goes nowhere. We both know that from different sides. We both know that. Yeah.
And so what we'll do for the next one, so we're going to do 2 more on the same scenario, because this is quite an intense one. So we're going to do an in-between example of a tool that could be used to help settle that down. And again, it takes awareness from either partner or spouse to intervene at an appropriate time. And so one tool is to intervene with a timeout or some space to allow that brain to calm down before you deal with it. So let's just reenact that, Vinny, so we can kind of show people what that could potentially look like. So we're back in the car and we're having this argument. I saw you looking at that woman.
I'm sure you did. I probably looked at a lot of women, and if that hurt you, I'm really, really sorry.
I can't believe you're doing it again. It's not good enough. You know, we can't even go the mall in peace without this happening.
I know you're upset. I know you're upset. Hold everything. This is the time. Remember, we talked about a month ago where we usually go. We start battling it out. We get our swords out and we're battling to the death. I'm not trying to make you do something. I'm just asking you, could we just take like 20 minutes or take a pause or a timeout or a break? Let's just ring the bell in the fight and go to our corners just for a few minutes. I'm feeling like I want to lash out. I know where that leads me. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want us to fight. Can we just take a little break and then come back and see if we can re-engage? Is that okay?
You know what, you're actually right. Okay, how about we take some time and not discuss this right now in the car while we're driving home, because I'm also aware you're driving for that reason too. Why don't we go home, let's have some lunch, let's both just process this and calm down, and then we can have a good conversation about what was actually happening and going on.
I want you to process this. If we could just catch a breath, that would help. That would help me. I hope it helps you.
Okay. So if we stop there, this particular scenario does take awareness on both parties to know your cycle and what's going on, but to also intervene with a tool that will be helpful. And so this was also loosely based on one of my spouse people that shared a scenario that helped them. And so just intervening and saying, let's just take some time out so we can process this when either one is ready. And sometimes it could be a situation where the partner's ready to talk about it, but the spouse isn't. Or the spouse is ready to talk about it, but the partner isn't. So there's that understanding of awareness between both people to try and make the recovery and the relationship work, of allowing a time when both are willing and able and ready to process it. And that's that juggling act of the intimacy dance that you can talk about in terms of processing it. But a really helpful way of intervening. Again, catching yourself before it becomes responder on responder.
Yeah. Did you want to do the ultimate?
Yes. So we thought we'd finish with the example where partner is doing particularly well in their recovery and working hard. Spouse is also doing particularly well in their recovery and working well. And what can happen when really confident and good, effective, healthy communication can happen, and how that can actually lead on to deep, meaningful, true intimacy. So we're going to highlight the goal, the one that would be really helpful to the entire recovery process. Again, really emphasising both parties working recovery well. All right, so let's do this. So third time lucky, as they say, to make it the best. So we're back in the car. Vinny, I saw you looking at that woman.
I wondered if you saw. It wasn't the same old, but I wondered. I'm so sorry. I looked at a lot of people. I don't know which person you saw me looking at. I think I know how you feel. And what can I do? What can I say? I don't think I was as careful. I don't think I was using my tools. And I just tell you, I am trying. I'm just not there yet. It's the best I got. How are you feeling? Are you feeling are you feeling betrayed because I was looking at somebody?
Well, actually, I have been struggling a bit today anyway. I didn't have a very good night's sleep. And just being at the mall today, I was probably a bit more conscious and aware of other people and other women around us as well. So I must admit that I've also been struggling today, and I'm quite aware that I probably need to do some work on that myself. I wonder if I need to spend some time doing a bit of journaling and perhaps just talking to my spouse group around what's going on for me.
If I'm being honest, which I promised you I would, I wasn't being careful. I was being casual, and that's a red flag for me. That's a trigger. When lately I've had this attitude like, I got this, I can handle this. And probably that was a moment when I wasn't paying attention. I want to pay more attention to my behaviors and how they might impact you. I wasn't thinking anything. I was just kind of walking through the crowd, making sure I didn't bump into anybody. But I also know that you don't know that. and the old behaviors, looking, watching. I know how that must make you feel. I didn't know a year ago, but I know now how that makes you feel, and I'm so sorry. Please allow me to just keep working on it. I got some journaling to do myself. I'm going to talk to my group leader.
You know what? I really appreciate your honesty. It's hard to hear this because obviously I know that you're trying and you're working on recovery, and you are. Trust me, I've seen the results. You know, I've watched you do really well. It's just this still comes up for me, and it's pretty raw. And sometimes I can't even predict when it will come up. I just really need lots of support from you to process some of that at times.
Tell me what more I can do. Tell me what I can do right now. Do you need me to pull over? Should we go over to that little park over there? Go feed the ducks?
You know what? That may actually help. Just going for a bit of a walk and just talking a little bit more. Let's do that.
Great. Do you want to go by yourself? Do you want me to go with you?
Do you know what? Right now, probably a bit of both. Would it be okay if you just give me some time and I'm just going to go for a walk around the block, and then when I'm ready, I'll message you and we can actually reconnect and maybe have some time to talk this through.
Sure.
And we'll stop for you. So that's pretty much the ideal, when, you know, a good place to go when both are working recovery. So you probably saw things like spouse is aware of themselves and what's going on for them, partner is aware of them and what's going on for them. They're both talking about each other's recovery, but they're also communicating it to each other. And as they talked and processed, they were able to find a way of supporting each other individually, but also together within the relationship to help each other. And you probably saw partner taking ownership of helping and supporting and allowing, which can be really powerful in terms of supporting the spouse when they are struggling. So hopefully that last dynamic kind of showed that scenario in terms of each area working better. And not easy. I will say it's not easy. It takes time. It takes effort. And it's a gradual process, but having said that, when it does work well, it can really deeply help communication and enhance the emotional attachment as well as the healthy recovery.
Yeah. As we say, easy to say it, not always easy to do, but, you know, hopefully, and albeit in a slightly exaggerated way, there's that responder collision that gets me nowhere. This is my search for intimacy, is to fight and yell, defend, argue with my partner. All I do is move backwards. I don't get closer to intimacy. I'm farther away. But when we think about words like humility and being humble, but particularly thinking about the other's needs, getting that focus off what I perceive is my pain, real or perceived, but thinking about the other person, I speak differently when I truly am concerned about how my partner feels. The dialogue is different. It's not full of invective and profanities and et cetera, and defending and blaming. It's not. It's, how are you feeling? I'm sure I've made you feel that way. It's accepting responsibility for the betrayal and the trauma that we've inflicted on them, whether we know to what extent or not. We know we have allowed our partners to hurt. And anyway, it's so important, Raisha.
Mm-hmm. We use a common term in group as well. You've got to feel it to heal it.
Yeah.
But in terms of the relationship context, if you can, as close as possible with empathy and genuine kindness, feel what's happening for your partner, that's where that true intimacy and deep, healthy communication come through. And that won't happen if you're not working recovery. So if you're, accessing unwanted behaviours, it blocks your ability to see your partner and to be there for them, because you're too distracted. You're taken away from your partner, and you need to be reconnecting to your partner, not drawn away from them. And so it's also essential for that process. It just shows and highlights that partner needs to work recovery really well for the survival of the relationship, but also to be in a capacity to support the spouse. And then on the other hand, the spouse needs to do their work, regardless of if they choose to stay in the relationship or not, because this thing impacts them. the post-traumatic stress, the betrayal trauma that's linked to this needs to be worked on regardless. And so there is a space. I know we sometimes hear partners will say, my spouse wants you to sort your issues out and they don't want anything to do with it. Having said that, while a spouse may not have asked for this, it will affect them, and so they need to work through it. And knowing what you mentioned earlier about what happened with my family here in Christchurch, without those tools, I wouldn't have been able to access and do what I was able to do to get through this. So I will say recovery is a gift, and it helps. It supports, and the life skills that anybody can utilise. And if we want to be grateful in this space, we can have the gratitude of this, the opportunity it gives us to really focus on ourselves and have self-awareness.
Had a guy write from not one of my groups, actually one of the other group leaders' groups, and he wrote and he said, I came to Fortify to overcome my unwanted sexual behavior. I am leaving Fortify a better employee, a better husband, a better dad, and just a better human being. We sometimes think it's just about the overcoming of, using porn. When the traits that have me stuck in porn, the absence of those traits and the replacement of those with healthy communication is the fast track to intimacy. And again, we've exaggerated it a bit tonight, but not too much. This is the tone. This is how a little bit more about how it sounds. I'm hearing a little bit too of the partner, the spouse, and the relationship tying into this, Raisha.
Mm-hmm. And even the individual tools that you develop when you work on your own recovery, they actually help to build within the relationship because it helps the effective communication, which is pretty powerful. We have a question from young man, Vinny.
If we have one, I do not see it.
Shall I read it out?
Yeah, please.
So, I never had a problem looking at other women when I was in a relationship and with my girlfriend. Is this a good thing? And is my addiction to porn going to resolve with a long-term relationship? I have thought it would, but it has been a while since I had a relationship.
I wonder why I don't see that. Can you answer that?
I'm sure I can give it a pretty good go, yes.
Please.
So hi, young man. Great to have you here with us today. A really good question and quite an important one. Let's just say that I think it's great that you're here and you're working recovery, and also great that you're not struggling with some of the issues that we have raised in this particular scenario. Having said that, your question, is this a good thing, and is my addiction to porn going to resolve with a long-term relationship? The honest answer is no. You will still need to work recovery. Being in a relationship will probably still bring up things for you. And issues will come up because remember this situation and what you're working through affects sexuality. And for me, I believe a big part of Fortify is developing healthy sexuality. And so when you're in a relationship, it gives you, if you're on your own at the moment and you are working the tools and you're developing what you need to do to work on yourself, what a wonderful opportunity for when you do end up in a relationship again, to start working on developing healthy intimacy, healthy communication, the things we've talked about today, to enhance a healthy sexuality within your relationship. So it will come up. And to me, a really good sign of being in a long-term relationship where you are being honest. So, ideally when you do choose to have a relationship and you are in one, you'd want to be honest and share that this is something that I struggle with or am working on. And so you'll get a spouse or partner that will react to that in some way. So what you do with that will come up in the relationship in some way. So I do believe it'll be an ongoing journey. Because recovery is an ongoing journey. It is for me, even to this day. I continue to work on my recovery. It'll be a lifelong journey, and with time, it gets better and better and easier.
Raisha, thanks. It's getting dark here. I don't know if that's the signal to wrap up, but bring it all together, Raisha, what we've talked about tonight.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just seeing a couple more comments. I'm going to come back to those as we tie in at the end as well. But So the take-home messages for today that I think are really important is we've only scratched the surface. We've targeted a few commonly known scenarios that can occur with spouse and partner and with relationship recovery. So to me, there's probably 3 or 4 key messages. One is healthy communication. Mm-hmm. And what that looks like, and that requires self-awareness and recovery from both partner and spouse to allow healthy communication to occur. And so it comes from yourself first, being self-aware, and then it comes from being able to communicate what you need and how you need to voice that in a way that's going to help the relationship move forward. So a couple of tools that allow that to happen. We've looked at healthy boundaries. So particularly for spouses, setting healthy boundaries is essential for safety, for rebuilding trust, for allowing support to manifest itself well within the relationship. Essential. And then we've also looked at what it means in terms of intervening within a partner in a relationship, a spouse cycle. And so intervention, which also requires self-awareness, and knowing what to do and finding tools that are going to help when those situations or issues come up. And so we touched on a couple of good examples, and one of those was giving each other time out. So having a 20-minute break or a half-an-hour break and reassessing and recalming down yourself and making sure you're okay before you actually communicate with your partner or spouse. And then the other one, the final scenario, which was really helpful in terms of showing what it can look like when both partner and spouse are working recovery, when they are able to talk about it and communicate, and then able to find a way working together to move forward with the relationship. And that scenario was really well done, Vinny, in the way that it showed partner actually acknowledging and supporting the spouse to help with what they needed at a time they were feeling vulnerable. And it allowed for the spouse to say, I need some time, but I will come back to talk to you and communicate this, and we can work it out together, which is really helpful. So if we go back to our title for this webinar, emotional attachment comes from making sure that you're self-aware of your own emotions, which then can help with healthy work within the relationship. And that in turn allows healthy communication, which will deepen what we're all looking for really is true intimacy. And we know the opposite of addiction is connection. And what a wonderful opportunity to connect with true intimacy with a partner when you work recovery and you work the tools.
Yeah. Raisha, thank you so much. And we've sent a lot of our condolences, our wishes. A lot of the Fortify family have contacted you, and I hope you know how we feel, how we appreciate you. You have devoted and donated lots of time for the cause that we are all in, both as partners and spouses. I ask this of most guests, but will you come back?
Happy to. Okay. Vinny, before we wrap it up, are you not seeing questions? Because there's actually a few questions here that I'd like to quickly respond to. We've got enough time.
Having a little problem in our building, check your WhatsApp, but answer one of those questions. And remember that the questions that are there, when we finish recording, this thread stays open. And Raisha, if the question's for Raisha or for me, we'll continue to answer those. So we're not limited to just answering it right now, but if there's one there, for some reason, I'm not seeing, apparently nobody's seeing my messages and I'm not seeing anybody's. So again, we'll work that out with tech support, but I'm glad at least you're seeing them on your end. No clue why that's happening.
Yeah, so Lucas 2002X has got an interesting one, which is, should I avoid a romantic relationship until full recovery?
Good question.
Yeah, my immediate answer is probably no, because you will be recovering for the rest of your life. It'll be an ongoing journey. You will be in recovery, just like I am until the end of my days. So recovery should be with you every single day, and you should be working the tools every single day. So leading into a romantic relationship, if you work the tools before the relationship begins, it's going to really help you when you get to that relationship. But the issues and the things that will come up in a relationship will be there. So a really good way to put it is, regardless of having unwanted behaviours or not, anybody who's in a relationship needs to work on communication. Anyone in a relationship needs to work on being self-aware. It's just when we've got unwanted behaviours occurring, it amplifies the need to work the tools to allow that to happen more effectively when we're, impacted in ways that perhaps aren't helpful.
We think that we're always, the word recovery and addiction are somehow, those two go together. I'm recovering from poor communication skills my whole life. I'm recovering from selfishness. I'm recovering from lack of empathy, which ties into my selfishness. So in that sense, my recovery is really, I'm working on all of the skills that I struggled with, many of which really contributed to my unwanted behaviors, left me in a state of misery. And when I'm in misery, I'm always looking to medicate. And what do I do when I medicate? I reach almost always for that drug of choice, which in many of our cases is pornography and other unwanted sexual behaviors. I'm in recovery, but what I'm really doing, I'm just working on becoming a better human being, a healthier human being. That's really what this all, and we'll be, if we're not doing that the rest of our lives, we may want to stop and take a look at that. So just as we're using the word recovery, I'll be an addict the rest of my life. We're just going to be looking at becoming better over the long haul for the rest of our lives.
Absolutely. Shall we wrap it up? I think we're good.
Thanks, Raisha. A couple of little housekeeping notes. Thank you for being here tonight. Next Wednesday at noon, I'll be there with Coach Holly. We'll be doing Fortify Chat. And at that time, we'll be announcing our upcoming webinars for July, August, September. Sorry, those aren't posted yet. They will be by next week, shortly thereafter. But Raisha, we want you to come back. People love you. And it's been my privilege over the last few years to get to know you and to cry with you, to laugh with you. And again, you do a marvelous job with the spouses and the spouses group. Thank you for being here. God bless your family and send them our very best wishes and letting you spend time with us tonight and away from them. I know they need you. Thanks very much, Raisha. And thanks everybody for being here. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.